our finance department. Thank you for the report. That was what I meant when we were discussing the notes earlier in the week. Those were the notes that I really needed. So thank you for that. Now, you mentioned that after today we'll have a balance of 1.5 million in our contingency reserve. I thought we had 6 million in it at the start of 2016. We took out 3 with the deficit. So shouldn't there be 3 in there?
Through the mayor to Councillor Height, you're correct. We did take out 3, and then we discovered the issue with the water and wastewater debt payments that were going to the contingency reserve instead of the applicable water wastewater capital replacement reserve. So we did that restatement, and that put some more money into the contingency reserve, which brings us to the 7 million that you see listed in Note 10.
Okay, so at the beginning of 2017, what was the balance after you've restated it?
So there was some minor adjustments through the year, but it's very close to the $7.2 million after the restatement.
After the restatement. So, and then it came down 5.6 to equal 1.5?
It will after, if council approves the recommendations in this evening's report, correct?
Right. So we don't have another year where we can take a hit like that?
Through the mayor to Councillor Height, you're correct.
And what happens if we do run a deficit that's past that 1.5? Do we send everyone a tax bill at the end of the year, say, here's your share?
Through the mayor to Councillor Height, Section 290 of the Municipal Act would suggest that we levy for that deficit in a following year. I
see. Okay, thank you. Now, I'm on page 16, table 5. Snow plowing. It was $200,000 over budget, and I know, Council, we don't do you guys any favors when it comes to that, because if we think it's not snowing out, we cut into that budget. What's the budget for 2018 for snow plowing? Is it still down to where it's not going to be feasible?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Height, I don't know the exact number, but I do know we reduced our winter control budget by approximately $200,000 as a result of council's motion to reduce our budget by $400,000 for the 2018 budget.
Okay, thank you. Let me get to my other notes here. In table 5 as well, you had blue box and recycling. It looks to me that they have a surplus, yet the reason that you have in there, it says a budget deficiency. Is that just a cut and paste problem?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Height, the reason why we put the comment budget deficiency is because we ended up getting more revenue than what was planned. So therefore, if we had that information earlier, we could have budgeted more revenue and then put more relief on the taxpayer. So that's why we use the term budget deficiency. It's just on the other side of the balance sheet or the income statement.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's see here, where was I? On page 37, item B, debt payment. Okay, we're averaging around 5.5 million. All of a sudden it jumps up to $14 million. That's not sustainable. You'll have to refinance the debt, I take it, at that point?
That's correct. Through the mayor to Councillor Height, that's a balloon payment on one of our debenture issues, and it likely will be refinanced.
So we'll be refinancing debt, and that's going to cost us more because the debt that we've written up to that point. So how come it's not, I guess, how come you're not looking at that now? Because it's going to affect operating for years to come.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Height, one of the additional information items that the Financial Services Department is going to do with Council is to bring a debenture financing report to Council. And because I know there's several councillors around the table that ask about debt quite often. And unfortunately, we haven't provided a comprehensive report on our past debt and what we plan on doing in the future. So that is something that the Financial Services Department is planning on doing to answer those questions.
Got a timeline?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Height, that we would like to get the individual that would be pulling that report together, I'd like her to do the reserve reports first, and then after that, the debt report. And then we also want to do a comprehensive grant funding report for council as well to give you the good news stories.
Okay, thank you. Page 41, item 13. You got developer contributions. You have it in a budget of $25,000. It's been over $1.3 million for 2 years in a row. Are we going to fix that budget so it comes closer? I don't know why it's out so much.
Through the mayor to Councillor Height, we don't budget for the receipt of the development contributions. We budget for them when we spend them. So it will always reflect a surplus because those monies come in and then they're immediately transferred to the obligatory reserve funds. So where you'll see it match up with budget is when we budget to use those funds in capital projects.
Why use $25,000 in the first place?
There's a small, sorry, through the mayor to Councillor Height, there's a small piece of that budget or piece of those development charges that does come through the operating budget. And that's related to some DCs that are collected through forestry. And so that's why there's a small piece there.
Okay, thank you. Let's see here. On that same chart, I see we're losing just money on our tangible assets. We need to fix that. It's been like that every single year. We're losing too much on that, but that's just a note. Next on my list, page 47, the library. There's no budget figures in that one. It's impossible to figure out if they're on budget, off budget, or anything. It'd be kind of nice if it was looking like page 18, but I'll leave that up to you guys. Now, in here it speaks of the contract for wastewater that Veolia runs. There's only a $33,000 increase here. They also do water. So are we going to look at asking them to quote on managing our water systems at some point?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is a question for Public Works. I'm not sure if Mr. Houghton can answer that one, or...
Mr. Houghton, are you able to answer that?
Through the chair, no. I know that's been discussed. I don't know what
No, that's
environmental
that's
services
fair.
at with that.
No, that's a good question, but
Okay,
We don't
and
have
one
the
last
answer
one,
here.
I guess, notice of motion will get that done. We spoke earlier, Mr. Treasurer, about the actuarial study. So, do you need me to amend this motion? Because I have it written right now to get that done. Basically, put it in our budget that's coming up because you're going to need money to do it, I'm assuming.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, are you speaking about the landfill?
Correct.
So that study needs to be borne by Haldeman County because it's a shared service that we have with that county, and they are the principal holders of Tom Howe. It's in their county, and then any capital-related projects, any actuarial studies or anything like that, they send us our share of it. Similar to the Health and Social Services, we take care of it, and then we bill Haldeman County for their share. So it would, I'm not sure what a Norfolk County resolution would do in order to get Haldeman County to get the actuarial study done.
I guess we could send them a note to get it done. Now, do you need that as a formal resolution? Maybe you would know, Mr. Mayor? Yeah, ask him to do it, right?
is that we finish the balance of this, deal with the motion that is in the recommendation from staff, and then a motion from you after that to send a letter to Haldeman would be in order. That's okay with you?
Deal.
That's how I would do it. Further questions? Councillor Brunton.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Luke. Just very quickly, may I ask Mr. O'Donnell another question, if I may?
Yes, you may. Mr. O'Donnell, can you come back, please? Thank you.
And I'm just, something that's always come across my mind when we're dealing with debenturing, and I wonder, what's your thoughts on borrowing from our legacy fund? I think the last debenture was 3.63 or 3.93. I've heard that staff over there, their opinion, but I wanted to know, like, if we're debenturing at 3.63 or whatever, why can't we borrow at 2% and pay it back? I realize we lose the revenue. Of course, we didn't make any money with it anyway. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that. And I've heard the issue about you worry about our credit rating. Well, our credit rating's not that great anyway. So what's your thoughts on borrowing at a lesser percent and paying ourselves back?
You had your hand up, James.
I think the treasurer's willing to answer that.
Well,
I don't mind commenting, Doug. Let's hear from,
Through you,
you
Mr.
don't
Mayor,
want to answer
Councillor
that?
Brunton.
You don't want to answer that question?
I'd have to think about it for a minute.
He's
Miss-
deferring it to the treasurer.
Mr.
He may come
O'Donnell.
up with something.
Mr. O'Donnell may not know, we now have the endowment model with the
I
legacy
realize
fund. So we need to keep, we can't take from the principal, otherwise the endowment model won't work. We also have established plans, if you will, for the interest that we get from the endowment model. The roads, like I mentioned earlier today, the roads reserve, we have a plan to put that in the black after 10 years. Part of that is using $2 million from the endowment fund in that reserve. If we take the principal away to borrow from it, then it'll affect those interest amounts, as well as the Norfolk General Hospital gets $500,000 a year from that interest.
I realize all that. My question, I guess, then I'll ask it in a different way. If in another year we're not happy with the legacy fund and we decide we want to borrow money from it and get out of that particular investment, I know we got into the equities more, or at least that's the plan. Will we show more than 2.5? Can we do that? Can we put that money aside? Is there a chance we could make more than 2.5 on the legacy fund, even in the endowment fund?
With respect, this line of questioning is entirely inappropriate for our discussion. You are receiving the report from the auditor. The auditor is giving an opinion on whether or not our books accurately reflect the state of the financial corporation. This council, this year, approved a model for investment of the legacy fund. This council will not get to discuss that again until after the election, when a new council would. So this council no longer gets to make any decisions on investment strategy. We are not here to discuss investment strategy.
Mr. County Manager, I asked a question of this gentleman. He's our auditor. I asked him if it was
Which is
beneficial.
completely inappropriate, Councillor.
I asked him if we
Completely.
could borrow from the legacy fund. That's all I asked.
And with respect, he's not here for that purpose and not actually qualified to answer that question. He's here discussing the state of our books and whether they accurately reflect the true finances of the Corporation of Norfolk County.
That's part of it. The legacy fund is part of it.
Mr. O'Donnell, do you wish to answer the question that was posed to you? Whether you believe we should...
I would sooner defer to another time on that.
Okay, anything further, Councillor Brown?
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. O'Donnell, you may be seated. Thank you. Any further questions from members of council? I have in front of me the recommendation. It's exactly as printed on page 7 of your staff report. So we'll deal with this first. Moved by Councillor Oliver, seconded by Councillor Brunton. That's the report FS 1828. This is the audited financial statements and performance measures be received, and that the 2017 consolidated financial statements for Norfolk County be received, and further that transfers to or from county reserves and reserve funds as outlined in report FS 1828 be approved. Is there any discussion on this recommendation? Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Councillor Height, please.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. You know, the Tom Howe landfill represents $18 million as an unfunded liability. We need that report. We need Haldeman to conduct that report. It could be more, it could be less. So I'm not sure how you want me to word this motion. Maybe, Mr. Treasurer, you could help me out here on this one, because my other one's a little different, because we would have been doing it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Height, I would definitely help with the wording. I'm not sure, you want me to suggest the wording right now? Okay.
Give us your intent for this motion for a letter to go to Haldeman, if you will.
Or maybe that our staff reach out to Haldeman and
That's the idea.
speak with them that way, or?
Yes, please, because we can formalize the letter later, as long as we have the intent. Mr. CAO, do you wish to comment?
Well, I'd like to help Councillor Height obtain his objective, which I would suggest better than asking staff, is specifically that Norfolk, the Corporation of Norfolk County formally requests that Haldeman County initiate the process to investigate, okay, and here's where the accountants can help out, but appropriate actuarial review of the Tom Howe landfill and attended operating costs, words to that effect. So then you've got a full, strong motion coming from you, the guiding mind of the corporation.
Yeah, that's exactly how I would have worded it, Mr. CAO. Yeah.
Andy, do you have
Yeah.
that? It's okay. Our clerk has written that Norfolk County send a letter requesting that Haldeman County initiate appropriate actuarial review of the Tom Howe landfill site. That's,
Do we want to make it an offer to contribute or something?
I don't know if he wants. Go ahead.
It's fair to inquire as to whether you want the motion to formally include an offer to make a contribution to pay for part of that cost. I'm sure now the accountant's definitely raising his hand, but this will result in a cost being incurred.
Oh, yeah, we'll have to. We'll have to set money aside.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Height, there is a shared service agreement with Haldeman County on any of these costs, so it would be per the shared service agreement. That would be our contribution. Also, I would recommend perhaps a timeline for maybe for the 2018 calendar year.
They're not doing anything all summer. For the 2019 budget, maybe,
Anything to add to this?
if they could. I don't know if they could.
I don't know that it has to have a year. I think the formal request is enough to get a process started, but I think realistically, an actuarial study, one, I assume they'd want a budget for it for next year, and two, I think it'll take some amount of time. I'm not an actuary, but I can't imagine that's a quick process.
I agree.
You okay with this?
Sure.
I'll need a seconder before we discuss it. Councillor Brunton? Any discussion on this resolution? Councillor Brunton, please.
Just very quickly, Mayor Luke, would that include the Cambro site? Are we not involved with that one too? Oh, Howe and no, Tom Howe and Cambro.
You want me to add Canberra on this as well? We're involved with that.
They're both.
I didn't see it in the notes. I only saw Tom Howe. Are they both on there?
I'm sorry. Mr. Johnson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Height, my limited information on that as being a former employee of Haldeman County and a resident of Haldeman County, Canberra is a transfer station, and Tom Howe is the landfill site.
Leave it as this.
Correct.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Councillor Black?
I'm having a hard time supporting this because it's flying in the dark. I would prefer if to deal with this, we send it to staff. They came with some sort of report that explained the need for it, the cost of it, the sharing, how it all works. Right now, I really have no idea, and I don't know what exactly I'm supporting. I feel like I'm in the dark. Not that I wouldn't support this, but I'd feel a lot more comfortable if I had some kind of a report that outlined the details for me that I could justify.
Anyone else to discuss this resolution? I hear no one else. I'm going to call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We do have next scheduled a closed session. I am going to suggest that because of the length of that report, almost an hour and 15 minutes, that we move on with our deputations. First, I'm well aware that at 45 minutes from now, we have our public meeting, so we may very well have some deputations, have our break, and then do the closed session after the public meeting. Any objection to that, councilors? Thank you for giving me that flexibility. Our first deputation this evening is from Jeff Miller and Deborah Felice. This is the Haldeman Norfolk Housing Corporation, and they're here to talk about findings of the regeneration study. Mr. Miller? Your AB guy is off. Councillor Columbus, welcome this afternoon. Thank you for your efforts to get here. Appreciate it. We'll be right with you, Mr. Miller. We'll have this set up in a moment. Need the projector on? It's up on the screen. It's on our monitors on our desk. If you wish to start, there we go.
Good afternoon, Mayor Luke, councillors, and staff members. My name is Jeff Miller, and I am the president of Haldeman Norfolk Housing Corporation. I'm here today with Deborah Felice, our CEO, and Josh Workington from Tim Welch Consultants to present the HNHC regeneration study findings and recommendations. Before I begin, I would like to express our gratitude to Tim Welch and Associates for undertaking the task of writing the regeneration report. Tim has worked in housing, policy, and development for over 30 years, and Tim Welch Consulting has supported the development of over 800 affordable housing units over the past 10 years across many areas of Ontario. I want to highlight that the HNHC portfolio represents $55 million in billed assets to its shareholders, Norfolk County and Haldeman County, and these assets have been successfully operated for the last 43 years. With the support of the service manager and board direction, we have undertaken a regeneration study that has assessed these assets and identified opportunities for intensification and the development of our new affordable housing. HNHC considers itself to be a leader in the social housing sector and is now ready to commit to future redevelopment, development, and evolving partnerships. HNHC operates 16 housing communities, essentially 391 homes located in 111 buildings, and provides property management services for an additional 153 nonprofit units, and we want to ensure that these housing assets remain sustainable and viable in the future. The circles on this map depict the broad geographical area where HNHC manages housing across Haldeman, Norfolk, and the following two slides provide the community addresses. The Haldeman portfolio consists of 154 adult, family, and senior households. The Haldeman Norfolk Housing Corporation Norfolk County portfolio consists of an additional 237 adult, family, and senior households. We also manage 4 nonprofit housing corporations with 153 units located across both counties with a collective value of $25 million. From a financial position, you will note in this slide that of the 16 HNHC communities, 6 are unencumbered, and the remaining will be between the years 2019 and 2023. And once the debentures end, the rental revenues collected will not be sustainable into the future in a 100% rent-geared income portfolio and will not support the maintenance and capital needs in the years to come. With the development strategy in place, Haldeman Norfolk Housing Corporation will be able to divest itself of non-performing assets and develop housing that will better meet the rental housing needs. The regeneration report outlines the highest need for affordable housing in Simcoe, Dunnville, and Port Dover. This is based on the incidence of housing affordability problems and the centralized waiting list, which demonstrates the demand is twice as high in Norfolk County. And the need continues to rise with the total wait list households in 2016 of 245 applicants, and now in 2018, the number has increased to 313 households. Based on the future population projections, it is likely that the need for more 1- and 2-bedroom affordable rental units will continue to be the highest in Norfolk County. And this trend is being driven by a number of demographic and socioeconomic factors, including an aging population, smaller families, the loss of well-paying employment, and the sluggish economic recovery in both counties. We have established the Lighthouse Affordable Housing Development Corporation, and similar to the other 9 independent LHC groups noted in the last slide of this presentation, collectively developing $1 billion in new development between 2018 and 2023. We want to be the county's development arm to deliver an affordable housing needs. As noted in the regeneration report, by developing in-house, the affordability period will extend beyond the typical contribution period of 20 years, and the assets will be owned by both counties. The regeneration study identified where the greatest community need existed and then identified where there were opportunities for intensification within HNHC portfolio, as well as how these assets could be leveraged in order to create new affordable housing in both counties. By holding 2 community consultation sessions, we learned that other agencies were also interested in building affordable housing and willing to partner with us. This was evident when Community Living Haldeman partnered with us in a proposal to construct a 30-unit seniors build in Dunnville, which have also provided 5 units for their clientele. Although we were not successful in that bid opportunity, we are cognizant of the continued needs for more housing. We also know that we cannot do it alone. We require the support of our shareholders and many stakeholders, including federal and provincial partners, the local service manager, support agencies, and the private rental and investment sector. The regeneration report provides an excellent analysis of the HNHC portfolio, summarizing current and future capital funding needs and recommendations for the future sustainability of each location. In both Haldeman and Norfolk, the highest demand for housing is 1-bedroom apartments. And it should be noted that the need for senior supportive housing and shelter for other populations, including developmental disability persons with mental health and chronically homeless is increasing in both counties as well. HNHC will require service manager approval to proceed with a leveraging plan. In all cases, HNHC is committed to assisting any tenants affected by this process to accommodate their housing needs and relocation if necessary. HNHC is recommending that units located in both Haldeman and Norfolk be considered for leveraging to facilitate new development within that respective county. For new development, 3 sites were identified and conceptual drawings were prepared. Planning approvals determined, equity contributions and cash flows proposed. The development we are now working on is a 23-unit apartment addition to 219 Regent Avenue in Port Dover. To further explore this development project, HNHC has submitted a business plan to the Norfolk County Service Manager, and we have made an application for CMHC seed funding, both which will require support from Norfolk County as Service Manager. The seed program offers up to $250,000 in funding to undertake technical studies, drawings, and other items to support the development project. In conclusion, we are currently not meeting the housing needs in either county. Vibrant and complete communities provide employment opportunities, services, and sufficient shelter options for families to live and grow. We are seeking your support and strong partnership to meet the current and future needs of this community. Our corporation currently plays a key role in providing stable, affordable housing and building strong communities for the residents of Norfolk County and Haldeman County, and we feel has a key role to play in the modernization of housing. We have proven best practices business operations that are people-centered, partnership-based, and community-driven. On behalf of HNHC staff and the Board of Directors, I thank you for the opportunity to present the HNHC Regeneration Report and the strategic direction into the development of more affordable housing. We have provided the Mayor and the Norfolk County Service Manager a copy of the full Regeneration Report and can provide the electronic or additional paper copies upon request. Thank you. We'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. You're just under the 10-minute mark. We appreciate that. Are there any questions from council members? Councilor Black, please.
Mr. Mayor, through you to Jeff, and Jeff, thank you for all you do, and all your employees and board members. It's appreciated. But maybe this was a bad position for you to deliver your deputation right after our audited statements. And certainly my concern always identified the need for the housing, but my concern is how it's being funded. And I've always viewed it as a federal or provincial responsibility, not necessarily a municipal one. We only have only one place to get the taxes from, the property tax roll. So through your funding models, through your research, how much would Norfolk County be involved in any new project, like in terms of financial contribution? Do you know, like a percentage, and where we might get that money from?
Through you, Mr. Mayor and Councillor, that's why we're bringing this report forward. The report was requested to understand what properties we might be able to leverage or remortgage so that we could put those dollars back into the development of additional housing. In rent-geared income housing, as much as is very much needed by our low-income population, we truly believe mixed population type housing, affordable housing is the way to go. And if we're able to leverage or remortgage, that's going to increase housing. As to the funding opportunities, would be through leveraging, through mortgaging, and if there are any federal, provincial dollars, absolutely, we'd like to access those as well.
I just wondered, and maybe I'm going to get flack for asking this question, I know, But do you look at any other type of housing, maybe not as expensive type of housing? And dare I say, people do live in trailers. Is there any opportunity to look at that? Maybe not specifically trailers, but more housing that's not as expensive as what it is right now.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely. There's so many new types of affordable housing coming out, and we would look to best practices, what other areas have done as well, work with our service manager and try to come up with what's the least cost, but to meet the needs of the community. So we're open to all suggestions.
Thank you. Councillor Brunton, please.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. Thank you for your deputation. You were here a little over a year ago, and it was regarding the maintenance on your facilities. Where did that end up? And it was a substantial amount of money, if I recall.
Through you, Mr. Ayre, yes, absolutely. Part of the regeneration report that Joshua worked on, it identifies the facility condition index for each of the properties. And through that index, we're able to understand what our unfunded capital needs are. At this point, it's approximately $11 million across the Haldeman Norfolk community. And with that, in a regeneration study, that's where we're able to determine which buildings we need to continue pouring maintenance dollars into, or maybe through that report, we're able to analyze perhaps there are some buildings or locations within the portfolio that we're then better off to leverage to sell them, basically. So it's a constant, ongoing review for us through our annual budget, through our monthly budget. We're watching our maintenance dollars and our capital, unfunded capital. That's where we need to put money in the future, so that we're able to keep the homes in a safe and affordable and an adequate condition. So we continue to work on it.
Okay, you said $11 million.
11 million unfunded capital needs between now and 2030.
Okay, and so what is it you're expecting from this council? If you can give me a little more clarity what you're actually asking this council to do.
Read that. Yep.
I guess what we're asking, Council Brunton, could council direct staff to provide a brief to the CMHC in support of seed funding, which allows some further analysis and due diligent work to be funded by CMHC? Council could give an approval in principle that is okay with HNHC more fully exploring options for senior government funding opportunities for affordable housing builds. That's what we're asking.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 or 3 quick questions to you folks, and thanks for your presentation. Now that your regeneration study is being presented to Norfolk County and presumably to Haldeman County as well, have you given it yet to our MPP, Mr. Barrett? And if not, is that part of your formal rollout process that you're going to go and ask to meet with him and present these same results to him?
Yes, that's, and even to our MP.
Sure,
Also,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yes, that's our
Okay,
intention.
thank you for that. My second question relates to the graph on page, or the chart rather, on page 57 of our agenda, Jeff, and it's the bar graph that talks about demand for affordable housing, the centralized waiting list applicants 2016, and I'm sure Heidi is listening to this question as well. I guess I'm puzzled to see the third largest demand group there is outside the counties. So are there folks from outside Norfolk and Haldeman counties that are on our centralized waiting list for housing within our county?
So that would be a question for
Yes,
Heidi?
I don't care who answers it. If the mayor will allow it, perhaps she'd answer it now or after the deputation.
Wish to allow it? Do you wish to answer, or do you want Heidi to? Heidi, can you answer that, please, and thank you?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Oliver. Applications for rent geared to income housing are provincial. So although we have a local housing application, the Housing Services Act states provides eligibility criteria for housing that are province-wide. So the system, the provincial system of rent geared to income housing means that anyone living in the province of Ontario can apply to rent geared to income housing located anywhere in the province of Ontario. So yes, we do receive applications from people who are currently living outside of the county, just as we have applicants who are from Haldimand and Norfolk who would apply outside the county. One of the reasons that I could think of, just as an example, would be some of our special priority applicants who are leaving an abusive relationship. Sometimes the safest action for them to take is to move to a different location. So that might be where some of those applications come from.
All right, thank you for that. And my final question to you is on page 68 of our agenda again, and this is where you summarize the three units that were part of your assessment for the future. Yes. And I guess I was most interested in the second one, the potential 30-unit building on Chapel Street in Simcoe. This, in other words, would be a new build if it were ever to take place. And I'm showing my ignorance a little bit of that location. Is that land that the county happens to own, or is it privately owned, or what's that scenario?
So, so the report was charged with identifying possible development opportunities, and one of them was the property on Chapel Street. It's privately owned, and the only way we'd be able to develop it would be to purchase the property. But we're not able to move on that at this time, as the corporation at this time is not permitted to acquire or dispose of any properties until we receive that approval from our service manager. So for now, it was identified as an opportunity, but it's not something we're able to move on right now.
Thank you, Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. Through you to the deputation, you mentioned that you do have a report on the repairs that are required for the $11 million?
It's actually within the regeneration report itself. Every property has a facility condition index, and when you total that index for every property, it totals to $11 million.
So that report has already been done?
Yes, that's the report that our consultant prepared for us, the regeneration report, yes.
Okay, I see. So we didn't get a copy of it, obviously.
And we'd be happy to provide a copy to whoever would like one.
Okay, so like what are the steps you're taking to fix those repairs? You have $24 million worth of properties that are unencumbered. So your $11 million isn't actually unfunded.
Right. But through you, Mr. Mayor, we're not able to remortgage those property without going through the process, without our service manager coming to council, preparing reports, etc. So it'll be a process over the next year. If there's properties that we're able to mortgage, we'll be working with our service manager and seeking that support. As far as our reserves, though, wherever we're able to come in at a surplus, we're funding our reserves each year. And that surplus, gratefully, the service manager has permitted us to put into our reserves as well. And those reserves work towards our capital repairs. So we're always trying to increase that capital reserve to then put back into the buildings.
So just so I'm clear, what you have to get permission from Haldimand Norfolk Housing or us?
That's correct.
And that's holding you up?
Well, we're happy to work with our service manager. We met with Heidi and Marlene, and we're working towards that. So I would think within the next year, we'll be coming back to do that. We just completed the regeneration report and realized those numbers. I mean, there was always an understanding that we had unmet capital needs, but now this documents it through that report. The information came from our asset planner through our technology. And now it's just putting the plan in place as to how do we keep those buildings going.
Okay, thank you for that. My last question, I see you're working on a project in Port Dover, which is probably one of the most expensive places to build in Norfolk County, and yet Simcoe and Dunnville are screaming for more affordable help. Why would you pick that spot?
Because through the report, part of it was to identify where is there land where we might expand. And Regent Avenue was identified at the side of the building as having available land where we could actually build up to the side of the building. That was the only building where it was feasible.
Okay, because it's, I don't know, a high demand area, and we're giving industrial land away, but thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Columbus, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could you, for the listeners, could you define rent geared to income and how many units are rent geared to income? And give some meat around that subject.
I can. So rent geared to income housing is really a legacy program that's been around for decades. It is geared to the household income. So all persons living in that household, their income is totaled, and then the rent is based at approximately 30% of the gross household income. For those social assistance recipients, there's actually a scale that's listed in the Housing Services Act, and by that we just go to the scale and calculate the rent in that manner. And the HNHC portfolio, we're 100% rent geared to income. So all 391 units at this time are 100% rent geared to income.
Thank you for that. And this regeneration study, what was the cost of that study?
It was approximately $100,000, and we were very grateful for the service manager to help us fund that.
Great. And Councillor Brunton asked the question about what you want from this council, I guess the CMSN. So how quick do we have to move? If the federal government and the provincial government have dollars available to do the job on Regent Avenue there, I guess it is, how soon do we need to move on that?
With Regent Avenue, we've proposed a couple of things. We'd love to avail ourselves of any provincial funding coming down the tubes. We'd also like to be able to leverage some of our properties, underperforming properties or those that make sense to leverage to fund the build of that property. Right now, in order to get ready for a build at Regent Avenue, there's a number of pre-development costs. That's why we made an application to CMHC through a seed application. They would provide us funding, and I believe we asked for $50,000, that would cover some of those pre-development costs. So that's what we're asking now. We'd like to move on that as soon as possible.
And how soon does the Housing Corporation require this endorsement by Norfolk County?
The sooner the better would be wonderful, Councillor Columbus.
The sooner the better. Thank you.
You, Councillor Brunton, please.
Worship, having listened to all the discussion, I'm wondering if we could instruct Mr. Miller's request to go to our staff for a report.
Well, what I have to do is finish the questions, receive the deputation's information.
Okay.
That's protocol, and then I ask if there's any further direction.
Okay.
Okay? Anything else? Any other questions to the deputation? Okay, thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Jeff. And
Thank you.
Can be seated. Thank you for your deputation. I do have a motion moved by Brunton, seconded by Height, that the deputation of Jeff Miller and Deborah Felice, the Haldeman Norfolk Housing Corporation, regarding the findings of the regeneration study be received as information. Any discussion? Those in favor? That's carried. Anything further on this issue? Councillor Brunton, please.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we forward Mr. Miller's request, and it was quite lengthy, and I can't repeat it, but if we could forward that on to our staff for a report.
Forward the request of our deputation to staff for further report.
Right.
Okay with that?
Yes.
A mover, a seconder, Councillor Columbus. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Brunton has moved and Columbus has seconded. The staff prepare a report back, prepare a report on the request of the deputation and report back. Further discussion on the motion? Councillor Columbus?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, how soon will that report be coming back to council? I think it's very important that we get an answer on that.
Marlene or Heidi, can you answer how long it would take for that report?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Columbus. We met with Ms. Felice yesterday and talked about a staff report and made a commitment to have that be a priority project over the summer.
So it'll be 2 weeks, month?
So, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Columbus, it's a bit difficult for me to put a definite timeline on it. What is required is that I'm going to have to do a full analysis and risk assessment of the business case for the Regent Ave project before I would feel comfortable making a recommendation to council on whether or not that should move forward, and whether or not council should support the seed application, because I believe it's my professional opinion that by supporting the seed application, there's some element of high-level support at minimum for the project. So I'd like to be able to do a full assessment in order to be able to provide my best advice to council.
So I suppose you hold the jack of power on this. Thank you.
Just before I go to you, Councillor Oliver, Mr. Clerk, comment, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as well, when this report comes back, I would suggest that it go to a shareholders meeting rather than a council meeting, because right now we're meeting as council and this is a deputation. Council can't, in effect, provide any direction, so we do it in a different process and more formally than we are today.
Okay, so it would come back in a shareholders meeting, correct? Thank you. Councillor Oliver, to the motion, please.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I was listening carefully to what Heidi had to say, because I guess I don't share her view that by supporting them applying for seed funding to do an investigation, if you like, and perhaps a feasibility, we would necessarily be supporting the ultimate construction of a building, because I don't think that's how that would work. But I guess I do have a concern with the timing, if it's going to require a full report. I'm almost wondering out loud, Mr. Mayor, if all that we did was ask staff to assess supporting their application for seed funding, full stop, if that isn't something that we could do more quickly than what Heidi has suggested might be required. And I know they responded to Councillor Columbus just saying as soon as possible, but boy, oh boy, if it's the end of August or into September before a report even comes back to the service manager, not us, that might be too late for them. So I don't know whether she can respond to that, and if so, whether or not Councillor Brunton would possibly put some further verbiage in the motion that would be just supporting them applying for seed money, if that would make it easier for staff and more timely for the applicants.
Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Oliver, if it is council's wish to have a higher level type of report that does not involve an in-depth analysis and a staff recommendation of whether or not we should move forward with this particular project, I could commit to having a report prepared for a shareholders meeting within 4 to 6 weeks.
Mr. Clerk, I'm starting to get confused here. We did receive a deputation here at a council meeting. It's been received. Is this proposed motion that's on the floor to ask staff prepare a report on the request of this deputation report back at a shareholders meeting? Is this motion in order at council?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would be, it's just to go further than that, we're kind of treading on thin water. It's almost like we're directing the Board of Health to do something. We aren't meeting as the Board of Health right now, so we can't do that.
So I think the report in 4 to 6 weeks would come back at a shareholders meeting, correct? And I will, Mr. Brunton, if your approval and Councillor Columbus add on to this to come back at a shareholders meeting in 4 to 6 weeks. Do you want time in there or not?
Well, I'm not writing the report, so if Heidi thinks she can do it in that time frame, I'll support it if the rest of the council are in favor.
You want to put it in, you may. If you don't, it's up to you. It's your motion.
Yes.
You want within 6 weeks?
That's fine.
I will add to your motion, Councillor Columbus, within 6 weeks.
Yes, we're on summer break anyway. Take it. Coming up.
You've heard the motion. Any further discussion, Councillor Black?
Through you to Heidi, and I don't know if this is a question or not, but I guess my concern is, again, I'd like to see how everything fits together. I'd like to know how this one organization fits into our organization. And I'd like to have a staff recommendation that this is actually a good thing to pursue and fits in overall. So if that's the kind of report that we're going to get back that will answer those types of questions on bigger picture housing, Norfolk County and the Housing Corporation, how they fit together. So I'd maybe a response from Heidi. That would be my concern.
Well, the intent of the motion isn't that at all, I don't believe. And so I think that would be, I mean, I can have Heidi answer your question, but this motion doesn't ask her to do that. Do you wish to respond?
So, Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Black, my response would be that staff can do an in-depth analysis of the regeneration study in its entirety and do some analysis for council. That report I cannot have back in 4 to 6 weeks. Any project for regeneration that is within that report would come forward to council individually, I would recommend, for council's consideration, and would have with it staff's analysis and recommendation as to whether or not it should be supported and how it fits in to our overall housing and homelessness prevention system and how it aligns with our community's 10-year housing and homelessness plan. The example that we're discussing right now is the proposal for an addition at 219 Regent Ave in Port Dover. I have been in discussions with the Housing Corporation about that potential project at a high level for some time and have requested a business case and have received same. However, there's got to be some analysis to do around that. So I would suggest that if council wants a more in-depth report of the regeneration study as a whole, that would be a separate report over and above what's being asked for a high-level assessment of their application for a seed grant for 219 Regent Ave.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. Just a quick one. 219 Regent Ave. Isn't the application they spoke of, they're looking for seed money to offset the development charges?
Mr. Mayor, through you to Councillor Height, no, the seed funding is for funding to do some initial studies and preparatory work to prepare for the development. So actual development costs aren't covered through seed funding.
Okay, so it's more like engineering, concept drawings,
It could be that sort of thing, and I would suggest that part of the report that I would bring back around the seed funding, I will do further consultation with the Housing Corporation to get some examples of the specific things that they would like to fund with seed funding should their application be successful.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion on this resolution? Sorry?
My apologies. I can provide a little bit more further context on seed funding.
I think that we're right at the midnight hour here.
Okay.
I know you were up there before, you weren't introduced. I'm going to continue with the motion. No disrespect, thank you for the
No
offer,
problem.
but we do have a motion on the floor, and I am going to deal with it. Any further discussion? Councillor Columbus Geisens.
Yes, can it be read, Mr. Mayor? Again?
Yeah, I can read it. Moved by Brunton, seconded by Columbus, the staff prepare a report on the request of the deputation and report back at a shareholders meeting within 6 weeks. Anything, Councillor Geisens? You ready to vote, are you? Okay, you get ready. I'm going to call the question. Those in favor? That's carried, thank you. I would like to do Mr. Cameron's deputation. Let's deal with that. These folks have been sitting here for well over 2 hours. Mr. Henderson has fallen asleep. I see he's awake now. So this would be an excellent time to hear from Mr. Cameron. And then we'll decide how we're going to